he did everything he was told to do. He was the shoulder she cried on, the man who remembered every anniversary, and the one who stayed up until 3 a.m. just to make sure she felt safe. He gave her a love that was pure, consistent, and above all predictable. But safety doesn't create fire. One night, while he was planning a future for them, she was staring at the door. When she finally left, she didn't say she hated him. She said something that haunts every good man. "You're perfect, but I'm just not in it anymore." How can you be perfect and still be replaced? How can a man provide the world, only to have her leave for someone who offers her nothing but a challenge? This is the silent epidemic, being the man she needs, but never the man she craves. There's a secret language of power that your father never taught you, and society tried to bury. It's a brutal, ancient truth found in the journals of Niccolo Machiavelli, a man who spent his life studying why some men are worshipped while others are merely used. Today, we are stripping away the polite lies. We are breaking down the 8 chapters of a man's resurrection. Today, we are stripping away the polite lies. We are breaking down the 8 chapters of a man's resurrection. If you've ever felt the sting of being too nice, or the hollow ache of being ghosted, this is the end of that version of you. The silence in the apartment wasn't just quiet. It was heavy, the kind of stillness that settles in after the front door clicks shut for the last time. You sit there, surrounded by the debris of a life you tried to build for 2, wondering how the person who once promised you the world could suddenly find it so easy to leave. This is the emotional wreckage, the hollow ache in your chest that feels less like a breakup and more like a bankruptcy of the soul. You gave everything, didn't you? You were the rock, the constant, the one who never missed a call and always had a plan. Yet, in the end, it wasn't enough. The irony is a bitter pill to swallow. The very things you thought would make you indispensable are exactly what made you invisible. We are taught that love is about selflessness, about being the perfect man who anticipates every need and smoothed over every wrinkle. You operated on the belief that if you were just available enough, supportive enough, and predictable enough, you would become the oxygen she couldn't live without. But love isn't a math equation where kindness plus consistency equals devotion. Instead of becoming her hero, you became the furniture, reliable, stationary, and eventually completely overlooked. Being too available is a slow-acting poison for attraction. When you dropped your hobbies, your friends, and your own ambitions the moment she signaled, you weren't showing her how much you cared. You were showing her that you had nothing else going on. You became a person without boundaries, a man whose presence was guaranteed regardless of how he was treated. In your quest to be the perfect partner, you inadvertently communicated that your time and energy had zero market value because the supply was infinite. It's a painful realization to find that by making her the center of your universe, you drifted right off the edge of her radar. Desire thrives on a bit of mystery and the knowledge that a partner is a whole person with a life of their own. By erasing your edges to fit perfectly into her world, you lost the friction that keeps a spark alive. You weren't a partner anymore, you were a safety net. And while everyone appreciates a safety net when they're fallen, nobody spends their days staring at one in admiration. This wreckage you're sitting in isn't a sign that you didn't do enough. It's the definitive proof that you did far too much of the wrong thing. The dust on the spine of the book felt like a physical barrier between the man he was and the man he needed to become. He had spent years operating on a currency of kindness, believing that if he just gave enough, listened enough, and sacrificed enough, the world would eventually return the favor. But the ledgers were empty. He cracked the binding of the prince, and as he began to read, the air in the room seemed to sharpen. Niccolo Machiavelli did not speak to him in the archaic tongue of a dead diplomat. He spoke with the cold, crystalline clarity of a predator, explaining the physics of the hunt. The revelation hit him like a physical blow. Human nature hadn't changed in 500 years. The technology was sleeker, and the clothing was different, but the primal machinery of desire, power, and respect remained identical to the courts of Renaissance Italy. He stopped at the line that has haunted every soft-hearted man since the 16th century. It is much safer to be feared than loved. In the silence of his apartment, the word fear initially felt heavy and ugly, but as he turned the concept over in his mind, the modern translation clicked into place. In the landscape of modern dating, fear wasn't about intimidation or the threat of violence. That was the tool of the weak. True Machiavellian fear was the quiet, terrifying realization in a partner's mind that you're a man of such inherent value and self-respect that you could walk away at any moment and never look back. He realized his previous failures weren't due to a lack of love, but a lack of consequence. He had made himself a permanent fixture, a safety net that could be stepped on without breaking. By being all-loving, he had become invisible. Machiavelli was teaching him that to be valued, one must be capable of withdrawal. The fear was simply the presence of a boundary. It was the knowledge that his presence was a gift, not a right, and that he possessed the cold internal strength to return to his own kingdom the second he was no longer treated with the prestige he deserved. The man looked at his reflection in the window, the glow of the desk lamp casting long, hard shadows across his face. He wasn't becoming a villain, he was becoming a protagonist. He closed the book, no longer seeking to be the man who was liked by everyone, but the man who was respected by those who mattered. The game hadn't changed. He just finally understood the rules. The realization that consistency is a slow-motion suicide for attraction hits you like cold water. You've been taught that being a good man means being a steady one, a man whose reactions are as predictable as a Swiss watch. But look at the landscape of human desire, and you'll see a different map entirely. You've watched the bad boy walk away with the prize while you were still double-checking the dinner reservations, and you've likely dismissed it as a glitch in the system. It wasn't a glitch. He wasn't winning because he was bad. He was winning because he was an unsolved puzzle. He provided the one thing your perfect man persona couldn't: the electricity of the unknown. At the heart of this is the psychology of the variable reward. It is the same mechanism that keeps a gambler glued to a slot machine. If the machine paid out $5 every single time you pulled the lever, you'd eventually get bored and walk away. The thrill isn't in the payout, it's in the maybe. When your affection, your time, and your praise are guaranteed results of her every action, they lose their neurological punch. You become a utility, like a light switch that she expects to work every time she flips it. But the moment the switch becomes temperamental, the moment she isn't quite sure if you'll be the charming conversationalist or the cool, detached enigma, her focus narrows entirely onto you. Consistency is for banks and insurance policies. Unpredictability is the oxygen of passion. The architecture of desire requires space for curiosity to breathe. If she knows exactly what you're going to say next, She has already finished the conversation in her head before you've even opened your mouth. You have effectively removed the need for her to chase you, to study you, or to win you over. By becoming a man of mystery, not through cheap parlor tricks, but by having a life so vast and interests so varied that you can't possibly map your entire internal world, you reclaim your power. You stop being the open book that she's already read a dozen times and start being the one she has to stay up late to finish. You learn that the most attractive thing you can be is a man who is present, yet perpetually just out of reach. When she can no longer predict your next move, she stops taking your presence for granted and starts fearing your absence. The memory of it still tastes like copper and shame. The frantic neon glow of a smartphone screen at 2 a.m. as you stared at a read receipt that felt like a death sentence. In those moments, you were the architect of your own obsolescence. You remember the double text, the second one sent under the thin guise of just checking in or a shared joke, when in reality it was a desperate flare sent up from a sinking ship. You were over-pursuing, sprinting toward a horizon that moved further away with every step you took. You didn't realize then that in the physics of attraction, the one who moves the most is often the one with the least power. You can likely still feel the sting of the apologies you offered for sins you never committed. You apologized for being too busy, for not being busy enough, for a tone she imagined, or for a silence that made her uncomfortable. Every "I'm sorry" was a brick removed from the foundation of your own throne. You thought you were being the bigger man, the empathetic partner who could smooth over any conflict with a gentle word. In reality, you were a man negotiating for scraps of affection. You put your hobbies on ice, let your gym membership gather dust, and told your friends maybe next time, just in case she decided to grant you an hour of her Tuesday night. You were a king who turned himself into a court jester, hoping for a smile that never came. This is where the Machiavellian law cuts through the sentimentality like a scalpel. Explaining signals weakness. The moment you begin to defend your value, you have already admitted that your value is up for debate. A man of true power does not need to explain why he is worthy of respect, nor does he need to justify his actions to someone who is actively withdrawing. When you over-explain your intentions or over-justify your boundaries, you aren't communicating. You are begging for permission to exist in her space. The more you tried to prove you were the perfect man, the more you proved you were a man who could be toyed with. High value is a silent frequency. It is felt, not heard. By over-pursuing, you broke that frequency with the static of insecurity. You learned the hard way that you cannot chase a woman into loving you, just as you cannot shout at a shadow to make it stand still. Every text sent in a panic, and every unearned apology was a confession that you feared losing her more than you valued yourself. The wreckage of Chapter 1 wasn't just caused by her leaving. It was caused by you staying long after your dignity had already departed. The transition from the wreckage to the throne begins with a single brutal realization. Whoever is the most emotionally reactive in a room is the one who is being ruled. You have spent years as a passenger in your own life, allowing her moods, her silences, and her whims to dictate the weather of your internal world. If a short text from her could make your morning, and a cold shoulder could ruin your entire week, then you weren't a partner. You were a satellite orbiting a planet that didn't even notice your gravity. To become the prince of your own state, you must first reclaim your frame. Frame control is the architecture of the immovable throne. It is the invisible boundary that dictates that your reality is the primary one. In the past, when she entered a room radiating tension or sparked a pointless argument, you scurried to fix it. You absorbed her chaos, becoming a mirror of her instability. You thought this was empathy. Machiavelli would call it a surrender of the crown. True power lies in emotional stoicism, not the absence of feeling, but the refusal to let outside storms breach your castle walls. You must become the calm center of her hurricane. When she realizes that her flashes of anger or her calculated withdrawals cannot shake your composure, the dynamic shifts. A woman cannot respect a man she can easily manipulate with a pout or a slammed door. By remaining grounded, unbothered, and focused on your own mission, you signal that your internal peace is not for sale. You aren't being cold, you are being solid. You are showing her that while she is welcome to join you in your kingdom, she does not have the authority to set it on fire. This is the art of the immovable throne. When she can't rattle you, she stops trying to break you and starts trying to align with you. Your stability becomes a magnet. She begins to look to you for the lead because you have proven that you are the only one capable of providing it. You are no longer the man who begs for a change in her weather. You are the man who remains unchanged by the seasons. The moment you stop reacting is the moment you start leading. You have finally stopped being a victim of the storm and started being the mountain. Machiavelli's world was one of iron and strategy, where he insisted that a prince should have no other thought or aim but war, its rules, and its discipline. In the modern era, your war isn't fought with pikes on a muddy field. It is fought in the boardroom, the gym, the studio, and the quiet hours of the morning when the rest of the world is still dreaming. This is your mission, the singular, driving purpose that defines who you are beyond the reach of any relationship. To be the man she respects, your mission must become your mistress. It must be the thing that keeps you up at night and the first thing that pulls you out of bed, a legacy-building fire that burns independently of her approval. The fatal error of the perfect man was making the woman his mission. You turned her happiness into your primary KPI, and in doing so, you became a man without a country. When you have no higher purpose, you become a clingy observer of her life, rather than the protagonist of your own. But when a man is consumed by his craft, when he is building an empire, sharpening his body, or mastering a difficult skill, he radiates a different kind of power. He becomes a man in motion, and there is nothing more magnetic than a man who is going somewhere with or without the person standing next to him. And there's a psychological tug of war that happens when a woman realizes she is second to your mission. Paradoxically, being number two is exactly what makes her want to be number one. If she is the absolute center of your universe, she has nowhere to go but out. The space is too small and the air too thin. But when she sees you committed to a higher calling, she feels the urge to compete for your focus. She doesn't want a man she can fully possess. She wants a man who is worth winning over day after day. Your devotion to your work creates a healthy challenge, a reminder that your time is a finite resource governed by your ambitions, not her whims. By elevating your mission, you stop being a beggar for her attention and start being a producer of value. You are no longer waiting by the phone because you're too busy building the world. This isn't about neglecting her. It's about having a spine made of purpose. When your life is an expansive, unfolding epic, she won't want to be the director. She'll fight for the best seat in the house. The path to the throne is paved with a word most men have forgotten how to use without a trembling lip. No. We have been conditioned to believe that harmony is the ultimate goal, that a smooth evening is a successful one, and that yes is the lubricant that keeps the machinery of a relationship from grinding to a halt. You spent months nodding when you should have been shaking your head, swallowing your opinions to avoid a ripple in the water, and compromising until there was nothing left of your original shape. You thought you were being agreeable. Machiavelli would tell you that you were being conquered. Fortune, as the old adage goes, favors the bold. In the psychology of attraction, boldness is not a loud shout or a puffed chest. It is the quiet, unwavering ability to stand your ground when your values are tested. Most men are terrified to disagree, because they are terrified of the silence that follows. They fear that a no will be the final thread that snaps, sending the woman walking out the door. But here's the cold, hard truth of the Machiavellian revelation. If your relationship depends on your total submission, you don't have a partnership. You have a hostage situation where you are the one in chains. The most attractive thing a man can do is risk the relationship for the sake of his integrity. When you look her in the eye and calmly disagree, not out of spite, but out of a genuine sense of self, you communicate that you are a man of substance. You are showing her that you have a walk-away price. This is the ultimate leverage. In any negotiation, whether in a palace or a living room, power belongs to the person who needs the deal the least. When you are willing to lose her to keep yourself, you become the most powerful person in the room. Ironically, the moment you stop being afraid to lose her is often the moment she becomes most afraid to lose you. A woman cannot truly lean into a man she can push over. She needs to know that you are a solid wall, not a swinging door. By saying no, you set the boundaries of your kingdom. You define what is acceptable and what is not. You stop being the man who is easy to get along with and start being the man who is impossible to replace. Boldness is the signal that you are the master of your own fate, and that while she is a cherished guest in your world, the laws of the land are still written by you. The funeral for the good man was a quiet affair, held in the silence of your own realization. He was a creature of compromise, a man who traded his dignity for a fleeting smile and his backbone for the illusion of peace. That version of you is dead, buried under the weight of the wreckage you once called a life. From those ashes, the great man has been born, not through a change in clothes or a louder voice, but through a fundamental shift in the soul. You have integrated the Machiavellian shadow. You are still capable of kindness, but it is no longer a submissive reflex. It is a choice made from a position of strength. You are kind, but you have teeth. You are a predator who chooses peace, which is infinitely more formidable than a prey animal who has no other option. This is the state of the sovereign man. You are loving, but you are detached. You have learned the hardest lesson of all, that you can care deeply for someone without making them the source of your identity. Your happiness is now a self-sustaining ecosystem, fueled by your mission and guarded by your pillars of frame and boldness. You no longer look at a woman as a missing piece of your puzzle, but as a guest in a gallery that is already complete. Because you no longer need her to define you, you are finally free to actually lead her. You have replaced the desperate energy of a seeker with the grounded gravity of a king. Then comes the moment you once prayed for, the one that used to haunt your sleepless nights. The screen lights up, a name flashes, the one that used to send your heart into a frantic, submissive gallop. She is reaching out. Maybe it's a hey or a thinking of you, or a coded probe to see if the safety net is still stretched tight across the floor. In the past, you would have dropped everything to craft the perfect reply, trembling with the hope of a second chance. But as you look at the message, you feel nothing. Not anger, not spite, but a profound, cool detachment. You realize that the man she left no longer exists, and the man you've become no longer has a vacancy for someone who didn't value the original. You see her now not as a goddess to be won, but as a person who once walked through your kingdom and missed the treasure. You don't need her validation to feel whole, because you found your wholeness in the fire of the transformation. You smile, put the phone face down, and return to your mission. The resurrection is complete. You are finally, truly your own. And the world doesn't need more nice guys. It needs men of power who choose to be good. If this story hit a nerve, it's because you know the truth is overdue. Hit that subscribe button to join a brotherhood that refuses to be ignored. Leave a comment with the word King if you're ready to reclaim your throne. The old you ends today,